We knew big trucks were a big issue, but not this big. After our story 2 weeks ago, all hell broke loose. There was fear and there was anger. Anger at the truckies and the trucking companies for risking innocent lives. Anger at the politicians for letting them get away with it. But most of all, you wanted your say, some form of national debate to spark some kind of national action. Well, this week we arranged that debate. All sides came together. Truckies, truck owners, politicians, accident victims and their families from all over Australia. And we began with a recap, the drug revelations that really scared the living daylights out of viewers.
When it comes to truck drivers taking drugs, it's like masturbation. There's those that do and those that lie about it.
And you were taking drugs to stay awake?
Absolutely, you can't do it without drugs. You can't stay awake that long without drugs. If a truck's coming at me, I'm hoping that he's got as many drugs in him as I have. Because if he's got the same amount of drugs as me and I'm wide awake, so will he be.
Sounds terrifying to me.
It is. But that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the industry.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Must be a couple of hundred people here. We're overflowing at the seams. You've come from all over Australia. Thank you very much. Rudy, you must be about the most unpopular truck driver in the country. You admit to taking drugs. Why do you do it, and why on earth do you then go public?
Purely because I'd like to see a change in the industry. I'd like to see it made safer.
Have you had a rough time since you appeared?
Yes.
Any threats, any phone calls?
Numerous.
And why did you take drugs?
Because that's the only way you can do those stretches of hours without shutting your eyes and dying.
My husband's been in this transport industry for 26 years. I have a group of blokes here who are in our association and they don't take drugs. Yeah. And all I can say to you is you are destroying our industry. If you can't do it without them, get out of the industry, because you are putting our husbands' lives on the line every night.
I've gone 6 days and had 6 hours sleep. I've left Brisbane at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning and been going down Greenmount into Perth at 11 o'clock on Thursday morning. 48 hours from Brisbane to Perth. You can't do that without drugs. I'm not advocating it. I'm here to see it wiped out by smart management.
I can believe that.
Tony Sheldon, you're the head of the New South Wales Transport Workers Union. What estimate do you put on the proportion of truck drivers who are using stimulants?
There's a view that long distance is as high as 80 to 90%.
It's a pretty terrifying figure, isn't it?
It's an horrific figure.
Rebecca, your mother and sister were killed in a crash by a truck driver who had amphetamines in his blood. Do you accept that truck drivers with drugs are safe?
No, I don't accept that at all. I still think that as a driver you can make a choice not to take those drugs or to pull over. You don't have to keep driving. I don't know what pressure you're under, but if you're on the road, you're endangering other people.
I was waiting in the main street for a park, and the truck driver, who was under the influence of a drug and had been driving for 16 and a half hours, went straight through our vehicle and killed our little 6-year-old daughter. Yeah. And he got off. The law stinks, basically. They don't care about human life.
My name's Kathy Campbell. That's the human face of not paying attention. Kills 2 beautiful little girls and their grandmother, Greg's mum. We too don't blame the truck driver. We understand an accident's an accident. We just ask all of you to just take a little bit more care when you're on the road, please.
I don't think anyone here thinks that truckies are taking drugs for fun. We all know there's huge pressures on you. Let's have a look at what some of those pressures are. You must be tired.
What are you doing?
What's your name?
Get on, mate. No, mate, get off the premises.
Paul Barry for 60 minutes. You must be pretty tired, mate. You've driven 24 hours, 23 hours, and you've been behind the wheel for 22 of them. Parker Transport tell us they've terminated the services of this driver after he admitted failing to comply with fatigue management regulations and his allocated trip schedule. So how many break the rules, do you reckon?
The vast majority. You don't always put down what you do during the day. It's just, how it works.
At least 90% of drivers are breaking those laws, and I could guarantee you that that those people who employ them know that it's happening.
You know, you're getting paid by the kilometre. The more kilometres you did, the better you got paid. And that within itself was an incentive to keep going.
And to break the rules.
To break the rules.
And how far had you travelled in that previous week?
6,732 kilometres.
Margie Lewis, your husband was a truck driver.
Yes.
Tell me what happened and the pressures on him.
That was 8 years ago. He was killed in a truck accident. He'd been with the new company for just 16 days, and the last 4 days he just drove beyond his limits. He pulled over into a clearing on the side of the road. He didn't apply his brakes, crashed into trees, truck exploded, he was incinerated. We didn't get any personal effects, not his wedding ring, wallet, not a lock of hair, nothing. All I am grateful for is he didn't crash into a car or anyone else, no one else was injured. He's left behind 3 children, the youngest was only 6 months old. He was only 33 years old.
Why did that happen, in your view?
He was pushed. He was only with the company for a short time. He had to prove himself. Otherwise, he would have got the sack.
Huey Williams at TWU. Do you think that's fairly typical? I mean, are there a lot of companies out there doing that? You're investigating a few in Queensland now, aren't you?
There are 5 companies being investigated in Queensland at the present time, and I think the story that was just told is very indicative of what's going on within the industry. There's no doubt about it. The drivers are forced to drive these unrealistic hours, and the company's very much aware of it, and they're continuing to do it, even up to probably this very moment.
Here we are in 2005 and we have 250 blokes that die every year. Every year. That doesn't include these people. What are we going to do about it?
I'll tell you what we're going to do about it.
What are we going to do?
Okay? There needs to be a better spread of money. The bottom line is money.
Right.
Okay? There's not enough money put in for the drivers.
Right.
Because they can't get enough sleep to make the money.
That's right.
They're putting too many hours in, not enough rate, okay? And if they get paid right, they can make a decent living with decent bloody f***ing hours.
Hang on.
You, Paul Gibson, you are chairman of the New South Wales Parliament's Stay Safe Committee. Do you believe that the big retailers are putting pressure on drivers?
I believe
are responsible in some way for what's happening on the roads out there?
Well, the big retailers wash their hands because they say they're not responsible for the transportation of their goods. So they then put the onus back onto the main contractor.
What do you think of that, washing their hands?
Well, they can't wash their hands. The onus has got to be taken and the pressure's got to be taken off drivers. And not only that, today it's nearly Russian roulette. You go out on the roads today, it's Russian roulette whether you're going to get back tonight. And it's not the driver's fault. It's the pressure that's being applied by companies.
Michael Costa, you're the Minister in New South Wales. Welcome. The only Transport Minister in this country who's come, as far as I can see. So thank you for that. Why don't we prosecute companies who are pushing their drivers if we can prove that?
Well, we are in the process of doing that. We've just passed in New South Wales chain of responsibility legislation. That'll come into effect by the end of the year, which will, for the first time, lift the corporate veil and apply penalties to corporations for breaches. But it's got to be done nationally. There's only 2 states at the moment that are in that position. That's Victoria and New South Wales. There is model legislation, and it really is a case of doing this at a national level.
We've been talking about this for 20 years. Why has your government done so little over that time?
Well, look, it's been a very difficult process because people are able to hide behind the corporate veil. What we're trying to do for the first time is lift that, and we're lifting it in a way that places responsibility on everybody.
Let me ask Professor Quinlan. Professor Quinlan, your report, published for the New South Wales Government in 2001, what has happened since you made your recommendations?
Very little. The responses were largely short-term and dealt with symptoms rather than underlying causes. The issues, these reports going back 20 years, at times identified the underlying causes, but they never addressed them, and when they did try to start addressing them, there was no action taken.
Yeah, my name's Ron Christensen, and all I can find that this is resolving today is that we'll punish the truck driver again by fining him, drug testing him, and all that. It still hasn't gone back to even the Harker episode, which you followed the driver for 24 hours. The driver got the sack, and that was the end of it. You know, all the politicians sit on their ass. What do they do? Nothing.
What would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see them get off their ass and do something. I don't care what they do, as long as they start penalising the people who own these bloody trucks.
Yes, sir, over there.
The question I'd like to ask the Federal Minister, seeing he's not here, but I'd like to ask him anyway, is how much more blood has got to be spilled before the Federal Minister gets off his backside and does something about it?
Let me just go to Glenn Fox. Your company actually uses onboard monitoring and some technological devices that allow you to know where your drivers are and what they're doing.
We have invested significantly in GPS tracking systems that every 15 seconds pings back and tells you if the driver is moving off, if he's slowed down, if he's going now over his hours. We stay within the law. We operate, we encourage, we demand and we discipline ourselves. We enforce. In terms of drug and regulations, we have no drugs in our workplace. We do not allow that. That, in my opinion, is taking responsibility as the operator and actually dealing with that on a systemic basis rather than just knee-jerk reactions and looking to other people.
Mike Williams, my name is. I'm an owner-operator. I also employ 4 other blokes. My problem is I've been doing it for legal for so long, come and have a look at my books, that I'm just about to go broke. And the reason why, I can't afford the fuel anymore. I can't afford to do it legal. I'm going to have to sack my boys. I'm going to have to sell me trucks. All the politicians are talking about is legislators. Put GPSs in me trucks. I don't care. Get the price of fuel down so we can make a quid. And up the rate. And we'll do it safe. And if my boys cross the line, I will go to jail. And so I bloody should.
I'm a daughter of a long-haul truck driver. The pressure affects the men, but it also affects the families. We saw him maybe a couple of hours on Sundays if he was in a good mood. It's the sleep deprivation and, you know, drugs for people, the drivers who do take them, that causes them when they are home, which is very rarely, to just be irritable, irrational, just not a father, not a husband. I'm 24 now and I've spent since I was old enough to know what was going on, 16, worrying about my dad. And I want to know that if the industry does get a turnaround, who's going to help the truck drivers who are addicted to drugs? Who's going to help them?
My father was killed in an accident with a truck driver, and I can understand all the pressures that you're talking about, but all I can hear is you blaming the other companies. You're behind the wheel and you're not taking any responsibility. From what I can hear today, no one has said it was my fault. Not one of you has said that. And you were the one, this man was behind the wheel who killed my dad. He wasn't jailed, and he did it again 6 months later to another family. No apology, nothing. And all I can hear is people saying it's someone else's fault. And I just wonder if you do have that responsibility, if you do feel that.
It's a horrible story. People are constantly out there on the road. There's 8,000 people that have been seriously injured in the last 4 years, and that incident that was just mentioned is one of so many horrific examples of the consequences of what's going on in this industry. Drivers are the same person that lives next door to you and I, the same people that are here today, probably very much like, if you don't mind me saying, like your dad. Decent, hard-working people, in this case, that have horrible choices, and if it hadn't have been that fellow in that truck, it would have been somebody else put in there by the employer to have done the same horrific thing that happened to her father.
Next to Rebecca. Are you John, is that right?
Yes, I lost my wife and daughter. We have no bitterness towards truck drivers, believe me. But I hope the forum that you've organised today, which we greatly appreciate, leads somewhere. I hope something more happens in the next 20 years than has happened in the last 20. And I must say I put a lot of responsibility back onto our politicians. I don't think very much has happened in the last 20 years. And I do believe a lot of the deaths that we've had on these roads would have been avoided if they'd got off their backsides and done a little bit more.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thanks for your contributions. We hope that this forum will be a success, that the politicians who are here and the politicians who aren't will listen this time, and that some lives at least will be saved. Thank you.
I'm Tom Steinfort. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au, as well as the 9Now app.